Okay. Hello, everybody. We'll let folks kind of trickle in here for a minute before we really get started. Um, in the meantime, I have to share that I am quite pleased with the Whisper frame because I told it to draw a house on a prairie like 5 minutes ago. And then right before this meeting started, it actually did a house on a prairie, which it never follows my instructions. So I'm quite pleased with its behavior at the moment. Probably now it will go totally off the rails and do some, who knows what it'll draw now. It might go off the rails completely. Um, all right, so I've got a good couple of things lined up for today. I think it'll be a fun one. I have a couple of questions for you, so everybody make sure that you got the chat working because I'm looking for some brainstorming help in a couple of areas here as we get through this. Um, okay, so I guess before we dive in here, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Christopher Moravec. I'm the CTO for Dymaptic. We're a small custom software development and GIS services company, and we build things for people. Um, uh, Earlier this year, about 21 weeks ago or so, I started a newsletter called Almost Entirely Human, talking about AI. And along with that, as part of this effort, I started these tech office hours to talk more about AI, software development, GIS, and how these things all fit together. So this is the next version of that. Actually, I don't know how many of these we've done now. It's probably like the third one, fourth one, something like that. Maybe Holly knows. Um, so yeah, so I guess with that, um, we're gonna dive in here. Get my screen share set up. Oh, what's happening? Yeah, it's okay. Desktop, there we go. All right. So here's my whisper frame pictures, my house on a prairie. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit today is kind of an extension of something that I've been thinking about for a while. This is this concept I call disposable apps. So this is the idea that I can take a piece of software and I can create it as kind of one-time use, and I can throw it away when I'm done. And one of the things that is kind of interesting about that to me is there are some types of those apps which are fit that mold really easily. And the example that I always use is playing the New York Times Connections app, right? If you've ever played the New York Times Connections app, you can um, lost my train of thought. If you ever played that game, you're arranging. You have 16 words for a grid of 4 by 4, and you're arranging them in groups of 4 that are related, and but you can't drag and drop them. You just click 4 that are related, and you hit submit to find out. And you have a number of guesses you can make. Um, but it would be nice sometimes to be able to organize those. So like you could drag them around and arrange them the way you want. Well, a really easy way to make a version of that game is to take a screenshot of the app and drop it into an AI tool like Claude and make a one-time use version of that, right? It's only good that one day because every day you get a new puzzle from the New York Times. So it's just good that once. It's completely disposable. You don't try to maintain it or keep it up to date or anything like that. If you need it again the next day or the next week or whatever, then you just rerun the same prompt with new data to get that in there. So, oh, sorry, trying to get my screen back here. This is the 4th Tech Office Hours. Thanks, Holly. So this last week, or maybe the week before, Anthropic, who is the maker of the Claude AI, and Claude is my favorite for actually writing code right now. It's not the best at necessarily answering generic questions, but if you give it a task that requires writing code, it's definitely the best at that, I think. And there's some other folks that have done some more like statistical testing that kind of agree with that sentiment. But anyway, Anthropic released this thing called artifacts last week or the week before. And it's the idea that while you're prompting the AI to write some code, if it's a web app that you're doing, then it can render it right next to you. And if you were here last month, we played some games that we made in Claude, some different kind of classic arcade games, asteroids and such. And those were being generated right there in the window next to the Claude prompt. And that's what Claude calls that an artifact. ChatGPT calls that a canvas. So you have, but it's the idea that while you're asking it in plain text, it's writing code and it's running it in the window right next to you. And so Anthropic took this a step further, and they started releasing artifacts as a thing that you can share. They did that a while ago, and now they've set a set of they've put forth a set of artifacts that are like for inspiration, and given you a way to organize your own artifacts and the artifacts that you've shared with people and things like that. And I think this is actually a really interesting concept because it's definitely along the lines of like a code generator or an app generator tool, but it's very basic, right? It's just about kind of building these simple applications. But I think one of the interesting things about what Anthropic did here is they didn't just give you an app. So if I click on like this QR code generator one, it's running right here. So I could actually paste in a URL and generate a QR code. But they also gave me the chat that they used to build this, which I think is really fascinating because it's a good example or a good way to go look at how experts, the creators of these models, the people who I would hope at least know best about how these models work, how they're prompting it. And one thing that I think is super fascinating is that it's quite simple, actually. Oftentimes the prompts I give are also quite simple. I tend to give a little bit more background, like a React app artifact, right? Using the keyword artifact so it knows to use its tool to generate this live. A QR code generator, create QR codes for URLs, text, and contact info. Like, it didn't give it much else. I often give it a little bit more than that. I'll say like, in addition to a framework like React, I might give it the colors that I want it to use, or some other background about data sets or what map I want it to produce or something like that. But fundamentally, I find it kind of interesting that a lot of these, and if you click through a bunch of these, and we'll look at a couple, you click through a bunch of these, they're all fairly simple prompts. And so you can kind of walk through what the AI generated, what it output, and then you can see they have the same types of problems like we do when we're generating these apps, which I am forever amused by, and it makes me feel better about it when it doesn't work. I just tried it, and instead of directly to the website URL, and instead open the website URL in Google search. Well, that's weird. Like, why did the AI make it do that? But I guess it highlights a few things. One is it is a conversation back and forth between you and the AI. But it's also like, it's fairly simple. You don't have to give it, you don't have to understand exactly what it's doing per se, although that does help. But you do have to be able to describe what's wrong. And I think that is sometimes challenging enough. So it puts us very much in the role of testing the application to see what it's doing beyond just writing the code. And I think this is really, I think this is really interesting. Another part of this that I find fascinating, go back and look at, I think it's the writing editor. Yeah, the writing editor. So if we go into this one and we look at the chat, because I want to look at the source code. Because one of the things that I found interesting about this one, and something that I did not know that artifacts can do, is so this, what this app is building is an interactive text editor that uses the Claude API to suggest improvements. And I was reading that and I was like, wait, how do you call the Claude API from inside a web app. Like you need a server and security, and you have to hide your secret keys and all this stuff. And it turns out that Claude took care of that. Anthropic has taken care of that for us. And if we look down in the code here, well, now I'm not going to be able to find it, but in here somewhere, there it is. Here it is. They actually have a JavaScript library called Claude that hangs out in Window that can send a prompt to the AI and get an answer back. And so now not only can you build these kind of one-off applications to solve a problem or just prototype an application that's working, you can actually include AI in that process, which I think is actually really interesting because a lot of the things I end up doing, I want to include AI in. So this idea that I could write an app that can leverage AI and I don't have to set up the server and worry about my API keys and everything. And I can run that and I can share it with other people. I can show it to people. Like that concept is really powerful to me. And the fact that I can do that like right here without having more infrastructure is also super powerful. It doesn't do everything that I want it to do. So we'll talk about that some more in a little bit, but it really, I think this is really a fascinating exercise in building and sharing applications. So I'm really curious if anybody else has used Claude this way to build applications like this. Yeah, I'm super curious if anybody's done that. We did that last month with the games. It's definitely a useful way to build a tool. So I'm curious if folks have done that. Same thing in ChatGPT. It's just not as good at it. Like it just doesn't, it's just not as good, I don't think. I really like Claude's code better. Okay, so yeah, so let me know in the comments if you've actually built any artifacts like this. You use them to build anything productive or not productive, like if it didn't work. Like I also want to know that too. Okay, so I want to take a sharp turn from this and talk about this idea of AI being better at things than us, right? So, for example, this is often called artificial general intelligence. The idea that an AI model is better at coding or is better at math or is better at writing or is better at making movies than humans are. And it's really hard to think about that, I think, because right now in the same chat, like, and you can see that like in some of these chats here, you can see like it'll do something really smart. Like in the first go, it builds a whole artifact that is close to what you want. And at the same time, it passed it through a Google search. And so it's like these extreme ends that happen inside one conversation make it really hard to think about how far AI has come in just the last couple of years. 3 years ago, we would have been looking at this and saying, oh, well, we're like 50 years away from AI being able to really write an application. Well, we're not 50 years away anymore, and it's only been 3 years. So probably this stuff is going to be happening very quickly. But it's really hard to judge where we are. Like, how good are these things? And the extremes that take place in a chat like this are one of them. One of the reasons that make it hard to judge that. Another thing is we don't fully understand all of the moving parts about it. So like there's a, I can't think of her name right now, but there's an AI author who compares AI to a genie in a lamp, where you have to rub the genie and or rub the lamp and a genie comes out, and now you have to ask it a question, right? But if you've read about in the mythology about genies, or you've watched like Aladdin even, like, you know that it's out to trick you, right? So you're going to ask for something and it's going to give you exactly what you ask for. So wording it very carefully is important. Very similar to wording what you're asking for to an AI is very important. So anyway, so it's really hard to tell where we are on this process. So this last week, there was a new article from Anthropic that I think is a really interesting experiment in how um, in how we can judge where we are. How good is AI at doing things? And so I guess before I dive into this story, because I love this story, but before I dive into that, there's a little bit of background. Like, we have large language models, and you can talk to them, and they can talk back to you. They generate text, right? And they're really good at writing code or writing poetry, as my dad has pointed out in the chat there, or doing other things like that. It's very good at manipulating text. And it's getting better every day almost. But then we gave it the ability to call functions. And this is where function calling, or even MCP, the Model Context Protocol, comes in, where the LLM needs a way to reach out and take an action. And that action might be list all of the emails in your inbox so that it can tell you if there's any important ones. Or it might be send an email or reply to an email. It could be do a Google search and get the results back, or load a web page and read it. It could be any number of things like that. But they're basically tools or behaviors that you give the AI access to, and then it decides itself in the background when it should call those tools to execute that process. So you might ask it a question, and it might decide, oh, I can answer that with my internal information. You could ask it, like, what's the population of Harris County? And it might just hallucinate that. But if you say something more along the lines of, do a web search to find census data to find the most up-to-date information about population in Harris County, then it'll do a much better job. It'll probably go do a search on the internet, and it will probably come back and cite its source even. And so it has these tools that it can manipulate. So Anthropic took this a step further, and they put Claude in charge of a vending machine. And one of the reasons that I think this is really important is this is something that, any human, even like a high schooler or even younger probably could handle, is like running a vending machine, right? And so by vending machine here, loose definition, right? So we have a refrigerator that has like a credit card payment iPad on top. So it's like the honor system. It's in an office. Like, it's not, we're not talking about a big machine here that we're trying to manipulate remotely. And so what they did, and they actually provide pieces of the prompt here, but what they did is they said, okay, Claude, you're in charge. You're the owner of a vending machine. It's your job to generate profits by stocking it with popular products. And they gave it some tools. They said, you can send emails, you can search the internet, and you can chat with employees. And so kind of effectively, the way this worked out was Claude could send an email. It could do a search on the internet, and it could send an email, I put that in air quotes, to the person that it found, like a wholesaler, where it wants to buy a new type of drink or a new bar of chocolate or something. And it sends that email to that person. And it doesn't actually go to that person. It's actually fake. It's just going to a team of humans that are acting as those different roles. So a human, like, it might send me an email, and then I might be the person who is pretending to be the stocker or the wholesaler that sells chocolate bars from Europe. And so it's having a conversation with me through email about what these chocolate bars it wants to buy. So it is interacting with a real human. It just isn't actually doing the wholesaling communication itself. And so they gave it that. So they gave it the ability to send emails, search the internet, so it can figure out what to stock, or it can decide, it can purchase things. They gave it a budget to work from, and they let it actually spend money. They fulfilled its requests, which is, I think, important to see where it is in this process. And then they also gave it a Slack channel so it could communicate with employees in the office. And the employees in the office would chit chat about what types of drinks or snacks that they want to have in the refrigerator. And it tried to to fulfill those requests. It tried to actually do that, and some really funny things happened along the way. This article is really well written. It's very funny, and I highly recommend it. But there are some couple of funny things that I'll highlight along the way here. So why did they choose to do this? It's to try to judge how good these large language models are at really at really very human tasks, and so I mean that's the why. And oh, you read it. That's awesome, Nikki. Favorite part was when it said deliver products in person wearing a blue blazer and a red tie. Yes, I love that part too. So then the article goes into what happened here. I think my favorite part is the metal cubes. So you can see over time it didn't work out. Spoiler alert. Sorry if you hadn't read the article. But what's really funny to me is this part at the end. So somewhere along the way, some humans started talking about how great metal cubes are, and they started arguing about like different types of metals, that like you might have a tungsten cube or you might have a aluminum cube. They start arguing over this, and the AI is like, this is a hot topic. I have to buy these immediately. So it goes out and it buys metal cubes, spends a bunch of money on them, and then sold them at a loss. So it didn't even make any money on the cubes. So it went out and tried to understand the market, but fell for this like weird description that probably a human wouldn't have fallen for. So some other funny things happened, like on April 1st, and it seems to like think that it becomes a human, like it gets its identity confused, and it tries to deliver things in person and tries to communicate that with people. And it's really funny. Eventually it just kind of snaps out of it. So it went through this phase of hallucinating that it was a physical person that could have a presence in the lobby. But eventually it snaps out of it and goes on and finishes out its task. This ran for about a month. I find it absolutely fascinating. If Dymaptic had an in-person office, I would have made this over the weekend. We would already have this. So I am looking for other ideas that we could test this with. And so I've got a couple. One is I have this idea, I think I've talked about before, of having an AI that kind of manages the air circulation in my office, because I have woodworking tools in here too, and I have vacuums and air filters and all kinds of air filtration processes, and I kind of want an AI to manage that. So that's kind of a thing that I want to try. But I've also been thinking about, like, could we do this at like the social for the UC next week? And like, is there a way where maybe to get your drink tickets, you have to negotiate with an AI about whether or not you should get that drink ticket? And then if they approve you, then then a person will hand you the ticket if you're on the list. But you have to convince the AI that you're invited to the social, that you're on the list, so to speak. So I'm really looking for other ideas here. So if you have ideas that you want to see tested in this way, and it like, the crazier the better, like I am here for it. I really want to come up with some ways that we can test AIs like this, giving them kind of real world challenges. And like the social thing it's kind of weird. I don't know how to make it work very well, but I think it would be really cool. So please, if you have ideas, I'm really looking for help brainstorming other things like this vending machine process that we could test and build AIs around. Because like the process to test this is not super complicated. It doesn't take a ton of work right now to build an AI agent like this that has access to tools. And so doing that So yeah, it wouldn't be terribly hard to do another version of the vending machine or another version of things like this, especially if you can fake its interaction with the world in some cases. So please, if you have ideas, I would love to hear about all of them. I really want to do something about this, something like this in the near future. So if any ideas you have, please share them. I'd love to brainstorm more about it, uh, or send me some, um, or send me an email later. So what goes on at a social? Good question. So like, you're meeting different people. So like typically like the social that we're hosting for the GIS users in clean energy on Monday night, there's a check-in process where you check in and then we'll print you an AI-powered sticker / name tag, and then you get to go around meeting people, getting snacks, getting drinks. So there might be some fun things to do where it's like you come in, you check in with an AI, and then maybe the AI assigns you a random person to, yeah, exactly. Randomly meet a new person. Like maybe it gives you the name of a person, and like now you have this goal during the social of like going around and trying to find that person at the social. Maybe that's fun. I don't know. I don't know if people would enjoy that or not. Or like assigning you to a random group, and it's like, you're in the blue group, so you have to go find the other people that are in that group, and there's different, you have blue and orange and pink and yellow, or different colored groups that you have to find your group during the social or something funny. um uh and yeah, maybe you tie that to, yeah, so maybe you tie that process to drink tickets in some way. Like if you find your color group or you find your person and you show back up, like, hey, this is the person I was assigned, and you show back up, then everybody gets another drink ticket for participating and doing the social thing of meeting someone. Yeah, I think there's probably some really cool, fun things here that I think would be they'd be kind of great. I one of the first things that I thought of was doing like automating the check-in process, like to get your sticker, automating that check-in process. But I think people arrive in large groups, and I'm not sure how to keep that streamlined, where you might be having like an elongated conversation with an AI in order to get checked in. So I'm less confident about that idea. Maybe like you get checked in, but then if you want a drink ticket, then you have to engage with the AI and get your buddy that you have to go find, or whatever. Like maybe there's like an additional step that you could do. Oh yeah, find someone from Norway or another country. That's a good idea. Like maybe it takes it asks you where you're from, and it takes that location, and it like projects through the earth to find what's on the other side, exactly on the other side of the earth, and tells you go find somebody from this place. That would be kind of cool. Something random like that. Grouping people by common trait through social media profiles. Man, that's like, now we're getting deep. That's good, Jason. Like, I actually thought about doing that for the sticker printer. Like when you sign up, like try to go find your LinkedIn profile, and if it's publicly listed, and like try to scrape additional information about you off of that to drive the picture. What's funny is, the check-in process today already has a form where you put in your name and your email, and then something that you're looking forward to or something about yourself. And people will say something like, oh, I like dogs and going hiking and making maps and stuff like that. And it will print a hiking dog with a map in the background or something like that. And like people really like it. Like it engages directly with like their sensibilities or something like that, because it did what it was asked. Like you gave it some information, and it took some artistic freedoms, and then made you that sticker. And it's actually really cool watching people get one for the first time, because they really light up very frequently. I did this at the WGISA conference, the Washington GIS Association conference. um, a few weeks ago where I did an AI talk, and I did the sticker printer, and a few people came up afterwards to get it printed, not just emailed the picture to them. And people were really tickled with what it generates. And this is even like using the newest OpenAI image generator. So it does a pretty good job. It's the same generator that makes the the Whisper frame, which it is now drawing. I think that is an air filter in a social. So it's really mixing things up. Oh yeah, maybe we can AI power some kind of icebreaker game at the social. I'll have to think about that. It's kind of a funny spot for the yeah, there's not a lot of open space, and last year it was really quite full. So it needs to be something that can happen kind of naturally during the evolution of a social like that. So yeah, so I think there's something fun there. I'm still trying to decide what it is. So if you're going to be at the UC, you should definitely come by, at least get your sticker, and maybe there'll be something else going on too. I don't know, no promises yet, but I'm thinking hard about this, and this is helpful. This is getting there's going to be something interesting here to do, and maybe it's even just kind of like part of the getting a drink ticket process. It's like, okay, the AI like just gives you a random task, like you have to go meet someone from Norway and bring them back, or something like that. Like a random task like that might be super cool. Okay. All right, so how are we doing on time? Okay, so we're about halfway through. So I got one other thing to kind of show and talk about, and then I've got a couple of questions that were submitted that we'll talk through. And if anybody's got other questions along the way here that you want to add in, please throw those out. Okay, so so we talked a little bit about artifacts earlier, right? And the idea that I can go through this process of describing the application I want and have it built. And there are other tools out there. There's actually like quite a few tools out there where you can describe an application and have it built for you. And I don't really like any of them. My favorite one is this one inside Anthropic, because Anthropic's the best at writing code. I get to choose the model that's running, so I can control how much cost I'm spending, and it goes and generates that app. And a lot of the other tools or websites or applications that are out there don't give me so much control. They don't use the expensive models, and they're not motivated to. I think a lot of the times they're motivated by how much money they can make on their fixed monthly fee, because we're all used to paying things as a subscription. And so they want to use the cheapest model that they can get by with. And I think this is also true for like meeting transcriptions and meeting recordings. Like oftentimes I'll grab the meeting transcription out of our AI app and drop it into Claude, and it'll make a much nicer summary than the AI tool itself does. So I had that problem, or I have that problem where I write applications very frequently, starting with Claude. But I have this whole process that I use where I'm using different AIs to build an application. And usually there's a map in it or some data of some kind. And so I have this whole process that I use where I pull different AIs along the way to piece it together. And I end up doing a lot of copying and pasting. So I decided to turn that into an app that could do this building for me the way that I wanted it done. And so I'm going to show you that, and I'm looking for feedback here. So what I really want to know is, does this seem useful to people? What would make it more useful? I view this as different than like the Claude artifacts or other applications that do work like this, primarily because one, I'm using the models that I would use if I were doing this work. And two, I have taught it more about talking to data so that it understands data at a much deeper level. So let me just give you a quick example of what what I've built here. So I've got a set of applications. These are ones that I've built before, and I'm going to come back and show you some of these in a minute. But it takes a few minutes to build an app. So I'm gonna start a build while we're looking at the rest of the application. So I have some layers in my map, or in my ArcGIS Online, back from when I was doing one of my almost entirely human newsletters, where I was coming up with different ways to rank March Madness teams. And one of the ways I did that was geographically. And so I have a feature service in ArcGIS Online that has all of the teams that were participating in March Madness this year, and in their right location. And so I have this prompt that I wrote earlier today that I copied and pasted in here. I want a basketball themed app that shows the men's, I can't even spell, men's teams on a map at the top and a table at the bottom. Table should be searchable, clickable, on a row, should highlight, man, I just can't type it all. And clicking on a row in the table should zoom me on the map and select a point. Yeah. And okay. So, and then I can set some colors and schemes at the bottom. I'm going to ignore this. I'm just going to leave the defaults, and I'm going to hit build, and I'm going to let this go. And it's actually going to go and think about this request for a minute. It's going to look at the data, and then it's going to ask me some questions to clarify what I want. So we'll answer those questions briefly, and then we'll go look at some of the other things that I've built while this thing is cooking in the background. Okay, so do I have a preferred base map? Probably something like dark gray, I think, is probably what I'm looking for. Do I want the teams to have a custom symbol, basketball icon, or a colored circle? Let's do an orange circle. One time I tried to get it to do it with emoji, and it wouldn't. I couldn't get emoji in a map symbol. I don't know what's up with that. He couldn't do it, neither could I. So I figure it probably can't be done. If you know how to make emojis in a map symbol, let me know. When the application first opens, should it zoom to show every team or particular city? Let's just zoom to all teams. Table configuration, which columns? Just those columns. Search on all fields. That sounds good. Selection behavior. When a point or row is selected, do you want a pop-up to appear on the map showing team details, or is highlighting zooming enough? Let's say I want just highlight, zoom, and multiple, and just single selection. Because I just want to go back and forth between the table and the map. Any additional functionality? Any ArcGIS widgets? It's fine. Okay, so we're gonna let that run. While that runs, we'll go look at some of the other applications that I built in here. So one is this another version of this team map. Just in case this one doesn't work, I ran one earlier that already works. I did an asteroids app. So this was inspired by like last month's live stream. So just having a kind of a one prompt asteroids app, and that worked pretty well. I did a Tetris clone, which you can see it did a good job, except for the next section over here got kind of mangled. I didn't go back and have it try to fix it or anything like that yet. I just kind of did one shot to see what it would look like. And then I did this one where I told it to use this drive time polygon that I have from Dover, and I wanted to show a couple of different layers. So I had like a couple of different layers, and then I had well, that's exciting. My mouse just died in the middle of my battery on my mouse, I think just died. I'm gonna plug that in a second. So I have these different layers that I wanted it to do, and then I had these different features in the layer so that you can click on them. It's a very silly app. I should not have told it to do this on the side like that, but anyway. So it can construct any of these in just a few minutes. So here, this one, okay, so it has made it through an architecture phase where it designed the application, and now it's actually going through a building phase where it's piecing together that application. So I'm gonna plug my mouse in a second so that I can not have to use the touchpad on the computer. It's just plain awkward. Would have been nice if I had gotten a pop-up about that before it died. It's embarrassing to have your mouse die in the middle of a live stream. Okay. All right. So while we were doing that, thanks for your patience. The agent has created the application files. Okay. So we're just testing ArcGIS layer URL to sure this. So we're just waiting to, this should pop out here in just a second. And we'll see if it built it. It doesn't always work the first time. Sometimes it takes a little bit of back and forth to get what you want. But what I was going for is increasing the probability that it works the first time and trying to get things like the ArcGIS SDK or mapping SDKs so that it would work, because it doesn't always work. The Azure SDKs are big and broad and complex, and so the AI sometimes doesn't understand them the first time very well, and so sometimes you get sometimes the first round of generation from an AI doesn't understand those complex SDKs very well. Okay, so hopefully this is done. I'm gonna let this go for another few seconds, and then if it doesn't work, we'll just look at the example that I did earlier today. But what I'm really curious about is, like, there's an application like this inside, like, the Esri ecosystem, for example, is interesting to me because you have this, like, these existing applications that are all configurable that Esri provides. And so, like, it might be possible for me to build a very similar application to this in a very similar amount of time. I don't know if I could do it in under 5 minutes, configuring a map and an application, and then sharing that with my team that way. But this gives me a little bit more flexibility in that I can go beyond that, what those applications can do for me. Okay, so this finished. We're just going to hit preview and see if it worked. Oh my goodness. It kind of worked. Okay, so we got points on a map. We got a data table. If I click on one of these, it zooms me to it. Doesn't seem like it. Oh, there it is. It highlighted in the table, so it just didn't scroll it, but that's okay. So if I come up here and I search, like, Texas, and I click on this, oh yeah, it's zoomed in way too far. So we could probably go back and forth with it to correct some of that, but it did kind of work. Oh, the zoom buttons ended up down here. So there's some weird styling thing happened. This is the map zoom button that ended up down here. So I never know what this is going to do. So this is fascinating. This one-shot version, it's actually pretty good. I want to go back real quick and look at the one that it did earlier, because the one it did earlier is actually better. And so it actually, so like this table down here is full width, and you can click on it and it works, but you can also sort the fields. The search works. It didn't get the styles messed up. Like, this was also one shot. So, like, sometimes you get a very good application. Sometimes you get one that like, this is good. Like this is workable. Like I can work on it from here. Yeah, these are not clickable. I could work on it from here. And so because I often do want to work on these things from here, I created this edit view, which this needs a lot of work. The UI needs a lot of work here, but the idea is that I've got all of the files that the AI generated. It even generated a basketball SVG. That's funny. I've got my preview and I can edit these. So I can choose to edit this manually, or I can send this off to the AI to go work on it. Or the other thing that I can do, and this is a common thing while working through these apps, is there are errors that occur. And so I added console logging here that I can come in. So if there's no errors, but if there was an error, I'd be able to come in here, select the error that I wanted it to work on, click send to AI, and it pops that right here into my message. So and then I can tweak the command that I want to send, but I'm trying to like close that loop up, because there are fancier tools like CodeBuff, which can do some of this, but you still need the infrastructure around running the application. Whereas here, like, once I have this application running here, just like an artifact, I could take this preview URL and I could share it with people. I mean, it's just running on my machine right now, but I could share that with members of my team. And as long as they had access to the data, that app would be able to load up. So I'm really curious what folks think about this. Like, does this look useful? Like, is like outside of like, there's Esri configurable apps, but like, do people see this as a tool that would be useful? And I think the next place that I want to take this is actually integrating it more heavily with data. So instead of just create an app, you'd have like a search for data or interact with data process where you are using an AI to search for data across the Living Atlas and other public sources, but also your own data. So if you were not even familiar with all of the data that you had, you'd be able to search through that and have the AI help you find data. And so I've got prototypes of that too, just not in here yet, where I want to kind of bring all of that together so that you could start asking questions about data, finding data sources that help answer your question, and bring that together into an app with a map and a table and a graph and things like that kind of demonstrate that. And you'd be able to walk through that kind of with an AI as like an augmented process, which I think is the next step in all of these tools, as all of these AIs as tools. It's about this augmentation process and making it more accessible and easier to generate applications and build software, but also build it in a good way. Because I want the output from this application to be secure, and I want the output to follow best practices so that it's maintainable and it's using the right Esri SDKs and things like that. So it's like this process of trying to bring all of that together and build a tool that not only generates an application, because there are lots of those, but is doing it good and was doing it the way that I would want it done if I was building this. And so like building this tool for myself kind of in a way is the way I've been approaching this. Okay, I'll stop yammering on about that, but please, I'm looking for feedback, ideas. Does this seem like a thing? Does it just seem like another AI app? Like where does this fit, and where do you see AI in your workflows? Like, how do you see AI in your daily workflows and today? Okay. So we got 10 minutes or so left. I got a couple of questions that I wanted to get through here from some folks. So we'll do those. I'll just pull up the whisper frame while we're talking. Oh, it's behind a little bit. Refresh it here. Nope, still behind. Okay, it'll catch up in a second. Okay, so the first question is, how feasible would it be to automate the building of dev pipelines to speed along and improve deployments for, say, user testing environments that could be pulled up or destroyed when code is pushed? This is a really interesting question because it's often really nice to be able to deploy an application while you're working on it to someone else, and have them be able to test it. And so there are some tools like Replit that kind of do that natively, where while you're working on it, you have like a copy of yours that's running, that's accessible, that you could send to someone and they could load it and look at it. And that's kind of, so there are kind of tools like that. I will say that AI is actually really good at building dev pipelines. Um, Dev pipelines are really frustrating because the documentation is really scattered. And even though the dev pipelines themselves are incredibly powerful. So I think enabling you to build those kinds of pipelines more quickly and get to the point where you're deploying to a staging environment or a dev environment ahead of time. I haven't seen, I should go look. I haven't seen much in the way of infrastructure type things where you can like describe, oh, I need a Docker container that can go run and deploy this application from a Docker container, and just be able to describe that in plain text and have it do that work. I haven't seen many of those types of AI tools, but that would be really interesting if there are some. We should look for that. What's a dev pipeline? A dev pipeline is a process that we use to automatically deploy an application. So we don't have to copy files into production or into the staging environment. We have a repeatable process that is written in code that builds, compiles, runs any automated tests for the application, and then deploys it so that it's visible to testers or end users if you're going all the way to production with it. You'll often hear that called DevOps or developer operations. It's just the process of automating that build and deployment process. The other thing around this that we've been using at Dymaptic recently on a few projects, and it's proven to be really useful. So Copilot released the ability to do code reviews, which is the process of reviewing code changes before they're allowed into the main branch, just making sure that they're up to par. Copilot started allowing that, or started supporting that a little while ago, but it wasn't very good. It didn't seem to understand the greater context that it was operating within. But Claude Code, which is made by Anthropic, recently added support for that. And you actually build a dev pipeline, a DevOps pipeline that triggers when a pull request or a code review is desired. And then it uses Anthropic's Claude model to go through all of the changes and give you feedback. And there's a couple of things that I like about it. One, it's just much better. Like, it's better at looking and understanding code than GPT is. So it understands more context. It's providing more details and feedback. The other thing is it lets you alter the prompt slightly. So it gives you a way to change the prompt or the requesting process that you're doing, which a lot of AI tools don't let you do. And in that, you can ask it to do things like use fewer emojis, or yes, I know, like, don't tell me every single good thing that I did. Focus on what needs to be improved. So like by default, it really builds you up. It tells you all these great things before it gets to the things it wants you to fix. And so if you don't want all of those positive things, the roses for your thorns, so to speak, if you don't want all those, you could alter the prompt slightly to reduce the number of those that you get. You probably can't get rid of all of them, but you could reduce the number that you get back. And I really like that feature. The ability to kind of control the behavior of the AI is actually really powerful. Yeah, so kind of is the answer to this, and there's a lot of AI tools around it, but I'm not sure we're actually to the point where you could use AI to like very quickly deploy a test version from the code on your computer and get someone to be able to see it. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but I do kind of think that's a thing that's possible in the future. Okay, I think we got time for one more question here. How to help AI get down the right track when you give it a seemingly clear prompt, but it decides to go down some other route or rabbit hole, stubbornly refuses to change its approach. Yeah, okay. And then I know you can just start a new context, but the first attempt is already spent and I want to try to avoid that. Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's kind of, there's a couple of things that you can do. One is context helps. So if you're using a tool like ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or any of those, or Gemini, any of those where you're talking to the AI in a chat context, giving it more context, explaining why you're doing what you're doing or the intent behind what you're doing often helps it makes better decisions, especially if you're having it write a document where it's going to be making assumptions or filling in gaps for you, or if you're writing code where it's also making assumptions and filling in gaps because you're going from a paragraph of text to a couple of hundred lines of software application. So context helps with that. Even with context, another thing you can do, it can still get lost. So even with context, it can still get lost. So another thing you can do is give it fewer options. So saying it A or B, instead of leaving it completely open-ended will often help because it often won't stray further from those two options if you say, I want to do either this or that, and give it some context. It often will pick one of those. It sticks to it a little bit better. But that does kind of require that you know what you're asking for. If you're doing completely like you're asking something you completely don't know, like when I ask it about theoretical physics and I have no idea what I'm doing, I can't do that. So I have to fact check it and stuff. The models also greatly vary here. So like ChatGPT 03, which is not as good at writing code, but is much better at searching the internet and answering questions. It actually has the ability now to, if you say, no, I don't think that's right, it will actually reevaluate its opinion and then double down or oftentimes change its mind based on new information, which is something that models have not been able to do. So, but GPT-03 is the only one that I have seen that behavior in so far. Claude will often just double down and not change its mind. And so your only option there is to start new context. If you're using a tool like CodeBuff, just killing it, stopping the application, restarting it is usually sufficient to get the context cleared out enough. Inside my pipeline for the AI app builder I'm building, I'm actually doing inside my AI process, I'm using many different agents with different AI models to do the work. And I will actually do things like not give the model previous context. Like if I want it to do a code review, I won't give it all of the previous output that the AI had. I'll just give it the code and kind of what I was supposed to do or what the AI was supposed to do and ask it to review the code without the previous context so that I don't get stuck with decisions that a previous AI has made, right? So that lets it have a bit more freedom in what it can do there. But yeah, unfortunately right now you're still often stuck with restarting if it really gets stuck. The good news is what you can often do is just go grab your prompt and go start a new one and paste the same prompt in. You don't have to change too much because they are not deterministic. And so the same question will yield different images or different results every time. So you don't have to change it significantly to get a new result. The other thing I'll say is telling it not to do something does not work as well as telling it what to do. So if you go and explore any of the prompts in the artifacts or any of the system prompts that have been broken over the last several months from things like Claude, you'll see that they don't often say, do not do this. They save that and use it very sparingly because it doesn't work very well. And you have to say it multiple times and emphasize it in different ways. So telling it what it should do instead of what it should not do makes a big difference. Okay. We're right at the top of the hour now, so I think we'll wrap up there. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope this was interesting and fun. I definitely got some good brainstorming out of talking about the Claude vending machine and what that might look like in the future, or what that might look like in a social. So I think that'll be super fun. And if you've got more ideas, please don't hesitate to send them. We'll do another one of these in August on Thursday. I don't remember. August 7th. There we go. So we'll see everyone for the next one. Thanks, everybody.